You ever taste something that don't just hit your tongue, but hits your soul? Yep, I didn't think so. Not until now. This is the Bambi Bar. Not your average corner store garbage. Nah, this is high-class indulgence. We're talking 24 karat gold, platinum accents, rose gold finishes. Yeah, we went all the way with this one. And inside, forget what you think you know about chocolate. This thing's infused with cotton candy. Sweet, airy, melts like a memory you ain't ready to let go of. It's soft, it's rich, it's dangerous. Like falling for the wrong person. And not caring one bit. This ain't candy. This is a luxury chocolate experience. The kind of thing you don't share. The kind of thing you hide. The kind of thing you take one bite of. And suddenly everybody around you, they don't matter no more. You want cheap? Go somewhere else. You want unforgettable? You already know where to go. The Bambi Bar. One bite, and you're made. Brought to you by Bambi's Sugar Syndicate. Luxury never tasted this dangerous. Disclaimer. Before somebody storms into the comments screaming, actually, relax. This documentary examines publicly available information, historical records, interviews, reports, and documented events. Where facts end and theories begin, we'll tell you. We're here to separate evidence from internet fan fiction. If you're looking for blind hero worship, this ain't it. If you're looking for blind hatred, this ain't that either. Nobody here gets a free halo and nobody gets a free pitchfork. Some opinions may be sarcastic. Some jokes may sting. If a little sarcasm causes your Wi-Fi to burst into flames, you may wish to locate the nearest emotional support blanket before continuing. As always, do your own research, question everything, and remember, just because someone says it on the internet doesn't magically make it true. Now grab an espresso, silence your inner keyboard warrior, and let's get into it.
Today, the city of dreams is about to wake up. Hollywood built an empire on glamour. Perfect smiles. Perfect romances. Perfect publicity photos. But behind the velvet curtains, behind the studio gates, behind the carefully crafted headlines, lived another Hollywood. A place where power mattered more than talent. Where careers were bought, sold, protected, or destroyed. Where scandals disappeared overnight, and some stars carried secrets to their graves. Tonight, we're pulling back the curtain. Not to tear down legends, but to understand the complicated people behind them. The icons. The rebels. The geniuses. The broken souls. The survivors. Some stories will surprise you. Others may completely change the way you see some of the biggest names in entertainment history. You'll hear about hidden affairs, long-buried feuds, family tragedies, political battles, criminal investigations, carefully managed cover-ups, and moments Hollywood hoped the public would forget. Because the truth is usually far stranger than the publicity department ever imagined. Now, one thing before the comment section catches fire. This documentary isn't here to cancel anyone. It isn't here to worship celebrities either. History deserves better than blind praise. And better than blind outrage. People are complicated. Some were heroes. Some were villains. Most were a little of both. Our job is to separate documented fact from rumor, history from mythology, and headlines from reality. So grab your favorite snack, turn the lights down, and prepare to step behind the cameras into a Hollywood few people ever saw. Because once the spotlight fades, the real stories begin. This is Old Hollywood Stars Who Were Secretly Gay, a Pizzaverse Studios presentation, a Palermo Productions original, written by Bambi Palermo, narrated by Vincent DiPrio.
Was old Hollywood really as perfect as the posters promised? Behind the tuxedos, gowns, studio smiles, and fake romances, many stars were living lives they could never publicly admit. Some were confirmed gay, lesbian, or bisexual. Others remain part of Hollywood's most debated mysteries. But one thing is clear: the studios sold fantasy while forcing real people into silence. These are the hidden stories behind the fame, the fear, and the masks they wore. Rock Hudson. Rock Hudson was not just a movie star. He was Hollywood's perfect romantic illusion. Tall, handsome, masculine, and impossibly polished, he became the dream husband studios wanted women to adore. But behind that flawless image was a gay man, forced to live under one of the most carefully protected secrets in classic Hollywood. His private life was hidden by publicity, fake romances, and industry silence, until his AIDS-related death in 1985 changed the public conversation forever. Hudson's story is powerful because it exposes the cruelty behind the glamour. Hollywood made him a symbol of romance while denying him the freedom to love honestly. Tab Hunter. Hollywood sold Tab Hunter as the cleanest dream a teenage girl could buy. Blonde hair, bright smile, perfect posture, and a studio-built image so polished it almost looked unreal. In the 1950s, he became a top heartthrob, the kind of star magazines framed as every young woman's fantasy. But behind that carefully managed image, Hunter was living a truth the studio system treated like career poison. He later spoke openly about being gay in his autobiography, giving the public a clearer view of what old Hollywood had hidden. His story is not scandalous. It is a reminder that fame often came with a locked door. William Haynes. Before Hollywood learned how to bury secrets, William Haynes forced the industry to show its cruelty. He was once one of MGM's biggest silent-era stars, sharp, charming, stylish, and popular enough to become a box office name. But when the studio reportedly pushed him toward a fake marriage to protect his image, Haynes made the choice most stars were too terrified to make. He refused to abandon his partner, Jimmy Shields, and walked away from acting. That decision cost him a movie career, but gave him something rarer in old Hollywood: dignity. He did not let the studio rewrite his life. Ramon Navarro. Ramon Navarro was built by Hollywood as the exotic romantic rival to Rudolph Valentino, handsome, intense, and wrapped in the fantasy of silent-era desire. Audiences saw the polished idol, but behind the fame was a man trapped between his private identity, his religion, and an industry that demanded silence. His sexuality has been widely discussed by biographers, especially because his later life ended in shocking violence in 1968. But the deeper story is not just tragedy. Navarro's life shows how dangerous secrecy could become when Hollywood created stars, then left them alone with the fear those images produced. George Nader. George Nader had the face of a dependable leading man, square jaw, calm confidence, and the kind of screen presence that fit perfectly into 1950s adventure, crime, and science fiction. But unlike many stars trapped forever in rumor, Nader's private life became more clearly understood through his long relationship with Mark Miller, who was also closely connected to Rock Hudson's circle. His career never reached Hudson's level, yet his story is just as revealing. Hollywood could tolerate talent, beauty, and discipline, but not honesty. Nader survived by staying careful, proving that silence was often not weakness, it was protection. Anthony Perkins. The public knew Anthony Perkins as the nervous, brilliant, haunted face of Psycho, a performance so iconic it swallowed parts of his life whole. But before Norman Bates became his shadow, Perkins was a sensitive young actor moving through a Hollywood that had no safe language for men like him. His relationships with men, including his romance with Tab Hunter, later became part of his documented private history. What makes Perkins so compelling is the tension between image and fear. He played anxiety better than almost anyone, perhaps because Hollywood itself taught him how terrifying exposure could feel. Montgomery Clift. Montgomery Clift did not look like the old studio heroes. He looked wounded, intelligent, beautiful, and already aware that life could break a person from the inside. His performances in films like A Place in the Sun and From Here to Eternity helped change screen acting forever. Biographers have long discussed Clift as bisexual or queer, but his private life existed under the brutal pressure of studio-era shame. The tragedy is not only that he suffered, it is that Hollywood praised his sensitivity on screen while making that same sensitivity dangerous in real life. Clift was not manufactured, he was exposed. Farley Granger. Farley Granger walked into Hitchcock's world with elegance, tension, and a face that seemed to hide a confession. In Rope and Strangers on a Train, he became part of films loaded with coded desire, danger, and psychological unease. Unlike many stars from the period, Granger later wrote candidly about his bisexuality, giving his story a rare clarity. He did not belong to the simple categories Hollywood loved to sell. He moved between glamour, art, secrecy, and truth with a quiet defiance. His career reminds us that old Hollywood's most fascinating figures were often the ones the studio could never fully explain. Sal Mineo. Sal Mineo became famous as the vulnerable soul beside James Dean in Rebel Without a Cause, and that vulnerability made him unforgettable. He was young, intense, emotional, and different from the hardened masculine stars Hollywood usually celebrated. Later in life, Mineo spoke more openly about his bisexuality, making him one of the rare classic-era performers connected to a more honest public conversation. But the industry did not know what to do with that honesty. His career struggled as he aged out of teenage stardom. Mineo's story hurts because he was not lacking talent. He was ahead of an industry afraid of complexity. Charles Laughton. Charles Laughton was not Hollywood's typical leading man, and that was exactly his power. He could be monstrous, tender, brilliant, grotesque, funny, and heartbreaking, sometimes in the same scene. His Oscar-winning talent gave him a place the studio system could not easily deny. His sexuality has been discussed through later accounts, including statements connected to his marriage to actress Elsa Lanchester. But reducing Laughton to private whispers misses the point. He made discomfort into art. He turned outsiders into unforgettable characters. In a town obsessed with perfect surfaces, Laughton's genius came from showing the strange, wounded humanity underneath. Dirk Bogarde. Dirk Bogarde looked like a matinee idol, but his greatest weapon was restraint. British cinema first sold him as handsome and desirable, yet Bogarde slowly transformed himself into something far more dangerous, an actor of silence, repression, and hidden emotional storms. His long life with manager and partner Anthony Forwood has been widely discussed, though Bogart guarded his privacy carefully. That secrecy makes his career feel even more powerful. In films like Victim, he stepped closer to forbidden truths than most stars dared. Bogart understood that sometimes the loudest confession in cinema is the thing a character cannot say. John Gielgud. John Gielgud carried Shakespeare like a birthright. Elegant voice, razor control, and a theatrical presence that could make silence feel royal. But even an actor of his stature was not safe from the laws and attitudes of his time. Gielgud's sexuality was not just a private matter. It became public after a humiliating legal incident in Britain during a period when gay men faced real punishment. Yet his talent endured. He returned to respect, acclaim, and eventually legendary status. His story exposes the hypocrisy of society. It worshipped his art while condemning his humanity. Gielgud survived the shame machine. Noel Coward. Noel Coward made sophistication look effortless. He wrote, acted, sang, dressed, and spoke as if wit itself had hired him as its spokesman. Behind the cigarette holder and polished one-liners was a man whose queerness was widely understood, even when society demanded coded language. Coward mastered the art of saying everything without saying the forbidden thing directly. That was not cowardice, it was strategy. In an era when openness could destroy a career, he turned elegance into armor. His genius was not just in entertainment, it was in survival. Coward made concealment sparkle so brightly that audiences forgot it was concealment. Ivor Novello. Ivor Novello was the kind of star Britain adored before the modern celebrity machine took over. Handsome, musical, romantic, and surrounded by an almost theatrical glow. His name became attached to glamour, stage success, and a refined charm that felt untouchable. Novello's sexuality has long been discussed as part of his public and private legacy, especially within British theatrical history. But his importance goes beyond identity. He belonged to a world where art created hidden communities, and those communities protected people who could not safely protect themselves in public. Novello's life shows how theater often preserved truths cinema tried to erase. Robert Reed. To millions, Robert Reed was the calm, sensible father on The Brady Bunch, the face of wholesome American television. That image was so clean, it almost became a cage. Behind it, Reed was a gay man working inside an industry that still treated honesty as a threat to family-friendly branding. His private struggle became more widely understood after his death in 1992. What makes Reed's story so painful is the contradiction. Television sold him as the perfect father while denying him the freedom to live openly as himself. He performed stability for America while carrying a secret the industry helped create. Jim Nabors. Jim Nabors turned innocence into a career. As Gomer Pyle, he became one of television's most beloved gentle fools. Sweet, wide-eyed, and impossible to dislike. But beneath that harmless public image was a private life protected for decades. Nabors later married his longtime partner, Stan Cadwallader, giving a quiet but powerful confirmation to a truth he had long kept away from the spotlight. His story is not one of scandal. It is one of patience. He survived an era that expected silence and lived long enough to see the world change. Sometimes, the most moving Hollywood ending is simply being allowed to be honest. Dick Sargent. Dick Sargent stepped into one of television's most famous replacement roles as the second Darren on Bewitched. But his real legacy became larger than sitcom trivia. For years, he worked in an industry where gay actors were expected to hide behind charm, marriage rumors, or silence. Later, Sargent came out publicly and became connected to LGBTQ+ visibility during a period when that courage mattered deeply. He was not just another familiar TV face. He became part of the bridge between closeted old Hollywood and a more honest entertainment culture. His story reminds us that coming out was not branding then, it was risk. Richard Chamberlain. Richard Chamberlain was once television's golden dream. Handsome, polished, romantic, and marketed as the perfect leading man. From Dr. Kildare to sweeping miniseries, he became a symbol of refined masculinity. But for decades, his private life remained carefully protected because the industry believed romantic idols could not survive the truth. Chamberlain later came out, revealing the emotional cost of maintaining an image built for public consumption. His story is quietly devastating because he had everything Hollywood said a star should want, except permission to be fully known. The audience loved the mask. The man underneath had to wait. Tommy Kirk. Tommy Kirk was supposed to be Disney's clean-cut boy next door, the dependable young star of family entertainment, adventure, and innocence. But that innocence was conditional. When his sexuality became an issue behind the scenes, his relationship with Disney collapsed, and his career never fully recovered. Kirk later spoke about being gay, making his story one of the clearest examples of how brutally studios controlled young performers. He did not commit a crime. He simply failed to fit the image the brand demanded. Hollywood often talks about protecting childhood dreams, but in Kirk's case, it punished a young man for growing into himself. Paul Lynde. Paul Lynde turned sarcasm into a weapon and camp into mainstream comedy before television was ready to admit what it was laughing at. With that sharp voice, arch delivery, and perfectly timed insult, he became unforgettable on shows like Hollywood Squares. His sexuality was widely understood, yet it was filtered through jokes because open truth still made networks nervous. Lynde survived by making coded identity entertaining enough for America's living rooms. That is the strange brilliance of his career. He was hidden in plain sight, turning the thing Hollywood wanted softened into the very thing that made him irreplaceable. Charles Nelson Reilly. Charles Nelson Reilly did not blend in, and that became his superpower. Loud, theatrical, witty, and completely unmistakable, he turned television appearances into tiny stage performances. In an era when many gay performers were pressured to disappear into neutral roles, Reilly leaned into personality. He later spoke openly about his life, but even before that, audiences recognized something defiantly individual in him. The industry may not have given him the leading man fantasy, but it could not erase his presence. Reilly's legacy is proof that survival was not always quiet. Sometimes it arrived laughing, overdressed, overqualified, and impossible to ignore. Billy DeWolfe. Billy DeWolfe built a career out of elegance, timing, and a campy comic style that felt too precise to be accidental. He was never the rugged hero Hollywood loved to advertise, but he became the kind of performer audiences remembered instantly, polished, funny, and deliciously theatrical. His gay identity has long been discussed as part of his entertainment legacy, especially in the world of stage, screen, and voice work. DeWolfe's importance lies in how he made personality profitable. He did not need to look like every other leading man. He turned difference into rhythm, and rhythm into survival. Leonard Frey. Leonard Frey carried a rare kind of vulnerability on screen, the kind that made even a small role feel bruised, human, and unforgettable. Best remembered by many for The Boys in the Band and later Fiddler on the Roof, Frey belonged to a generation of performers whose private lives were often easier to discuss on stage than in Hollywood publicity. His gay identity became part of his documented legacy, but his real importance is deeper than a label. He represented the actor who could turn pain into texture. In an industry afraid of honesty, Frey made emotional exposure feel like a performance weapon. Larry Kert. Larry Kert had the kind of voice that could make Broadway feel young, dangerous, and heartbroken all at once. As the original Tony in West Side Story, he helped launch one of the most important musicals in American history. But behind that dazzling theatrical success was a performer navigating an entertainment world where gay men could be celebrated for emotion, yet punished for living openly. Kert's sexuality has been widely documented, and his later death during the AIDS crisis added another layer of tragedy to his legacy. He was not just a singer. He was part of a generation that gave audiences feeling while being denied full freedom. Hurd Hatfield looked like he had stepped out of a haunted painting. Elegant, distant, beautiful, and slightly cursed. That made him perfect for the picture of Dorian Gray, a film where hidden desire, vanity, and moral panic drift beneath every frame. Hatfield was widely discussed as gay, though he lived with the privacy expected of his era. Hollywood did not always know how to handle actors who seemed too refined, too ambiguous, or too difficult to force into ordinary masculinity. Hatfield's career never became what his face promised, but maybe that is why he remains fascinating. He looked like a secret Hollywood refused to explain. Robert Helpman did not move like an ordinary actor. He moved like someone who understood the body as theater, danger, and design. An Australian ballet star, actor, and performer, he brought a strange elegance to everything from stage work to screen appearances. His life as a gay man was more openly discussed than many Hollywood figures of earlier decades, partly because the dance and theater worlds gave artists different kinds of freedom. But freedom was never complete. Helpman's power came from refusing dullness. He made performance feel extravagant, intelligent, and slightly unsettling. Hollywood wanted categories. Helpman gave it art that slipped through them. Micheál MacLiamore belonged to the grand theatrical tradition. Dramatic voice, commanding presence, and a life that seemed built for stage lights. Known to film audiences through work like Orson Welles' Othello, he was also a major force in Irish theater. His relationship with Hilton Edwards was one of the most significant same-sex partnerships in 20th century theatrical history. In an era when public honesty carried risk, they built a creative life together that could not be erased. MacLiamore's story matters because he was not simply hiding in Hollywood's shadows. He helped create a world where art became shelter, identity, and survival. Hilton Edwards was not the loudest name in classic cinema, but his importance sits in the architecture behind performance itself. Actor, director, theatrical pioneer, and lifelong partner of Micheál MacLiamore, Edwards helped shape a creative partnership that became legendary in Irish theater. Their bond was known in artistic circles, even when the wider world lacked the language or courage to discuss it properly. That is what makes Edwards compelling for this list. Not every hidden Hollywood story belongs to a poster idol. Some belong to the people who built stages, companies, roles, and communities. Edwards proved that queer history was not only survived, it was produced. Jack Larson was frozen in pop culture as Jimmy Olsen, the eager young reporter from Adventures of Superman. But behind that innocent television image was a far more complex and artistic life. Larson later lived openly in a long partnership with filmmaker James Bridges, and his place in LGBTQ+ Hollywood history became clearer with time. He also knew the cost of being reduced to a single role while carrying a private identity the industry once expected him to hide. Larson's story has a quiet victory in it. He escaped the cage of one famous character and became part of a more honest Hollywood memory. James Bridges moved between acting, writing, and directing with the patience of someone who understood that Hollywood power often lived behind the camera. As a filmmaker, he helped shape serious adult dramas, but his personal life also connects him to queer Hollywood history through his long relationship with Jack Larson. Bridges was not packaged as a matinee idol, which may have given him a different kind of privacy. Still, privacy was not the same as freedom. His story reminds us that LGBTQ+ lives in Hollywood were not only found in scandals or gossip columns. Sometimes they existed in long partnerships, creative work, and quiet endurance. Robert Benavides is often remembered through his connection to Raymond Burr, but reducing him to someone else's partner would be unfair. He was an actor, producer, and an important figure in Burr's private world, helping preserve a life that Hollywood publicity worked hard to disguise. Burr's invented public stories show how intense the pressure was for male stars to appear conventionally straight. Benavides's place in this history matters because secret lives were rarely lived alone. Behind many famous names were partners who carried the silence with them. His story shows the emotional cost paid not just by stars, but by the people who loved them. Jean Marais. Jean Marais looked like myth brought to life. Handsome, athletic, romantic, and strange enough to belong in a fairy tale. French cinema gave him a freedom Hollywood often denied its own stars, especially through his connection with artist and filmmaker Jean Cocteau. Their creative and personal bond helped shape some of the most poetic cinema of the 20th century. Marais' queer identity is part of that artistic legacy, but his importance is not only private. He turned beauty into something mysterious instead of simple. In a world that wanted leading men to be predictable, Marais made masculinity look enchanted, dangerous, and dreamlike. Jean Cocteau. Jean Cocteau was less a movie star than a force of imagination. Poet, filmmaker, actor, artist, and professional dream maker. His work blurred mirrors, monsters, angels, lovers, and illusions until cinema itself felt like a secret language. Cocteau's queerness was not a footnote. It flowed through the emotional atmosphere of his art, especially his collaborations with Jean Marais. He came from a European artistic world that could be more openly coded, yet still carried social danger. Cocteau matters here because he made hidden desire beautiful without making it simple. Hollywood sold fantasy as escape. Cocteau used fantasy to tell the truth. Helmut Berger. Helmut Berger arrived like a beautiful warning sign. In European cinema, especially through his work with Luchino Visconti, he became the face of decadence, corruption, beauty, and collapse. His bisexuality was publicly known, but what made Berger unforgettable was not just private identity, it was the way he turned image into provocation. He did not play safe glamour, he played dangerous glamour. In films like The Damned, his presence felt like old Europe staring at its own destruction in a mirror. Berger belongs in this story because he showed what Hollywood often feared, a star whose sexuality, beauty, and danger could not be separated neatly. Marlon Brando. Marlon Brando was sold as raw, masculine power, the rebel, the animal, the wounded genius, the man who changed acting by refusing to behave. But Brando's personal life was far more fluid and complicated than the simple macho legend built around him. He publicly acknowledged experiences with men, making his story different from mere rumor. That complexity did not weaken his image. It made the image more fascinating. Hollywood tried to turn him into the ultimate male icon, yet Brando kept escaping every box. His legacy is almost impossible to control. He was not just a star. He was contradiction with a face. Vincent Price. Vincent Price made horror sound elegant. With that velvet voice, arched eyebrow, and aristocratic menace, he could turn a haunted house into a drawing room and a villain into a gourmet performance. His bisexuality has been publicly discussed through family-related accounts, adding another layer to a man already larger than ordinary Hollywood categories. But Price's true magic was that he never seemed desperate to be normal. He embraced theatricality, wit, art, food, camp, and menace with total confidence. In a town obsessed with rigid masculine images, Price offered something better: sophistication with shadows. He did not just frighten audiences, he seduced them into style. Michael Redgrave. Michael Redgrave carried the weight of classical theater in his voice and the sadness of secrecy in his screen presence. A towering British actor, he built a respected career across stage and film, but later biographies also discussed his bisexuality and private relationships. His story belongs to that complicated world where public honor and private longing were forced to live in separate rooms. Redgrave's talent gave him prestige, but prestige did not erase pressure. He represents the actor as divided man, admired by audiences, controlled by reputation, and haunted by what society refused to accept. Sometimes the most polished performances hide the deepest fractures. Denholm Elliott. Denholm Elliott had the gift of making every scene feel lived in, as if his characters had secrets even the script had not written yet. Known later to wider audiences through films like Raiders of the Lost Ark and Trading Places, Elliott's career stretched across decades of British and international cinema. His bisexuality became part of his documented life story, but his performances rarely depended on obvious confession. Instead, he brought weary intelligence, humor, and melancholy to the screen. Elliott's appeal was never about perfection. It was about texture. In a business that sells clean images, he made human complication feel quietly magnetic. Alan Bates. Alan Bates had a face made for uncertainty. Handsome, intense, guarded, and impossible to fully read. That ambiguity became part of his power in British cinema. His private life has been discussed by biographers in bisexual terms, especially because of relationships that complicated the public image around him. Bates worked in a period when post-war cinema was beginning to examine desire more honestly, but actors still faced old fears about reputation. He played men with emotional turbulence because he understood that identity was rarely simple. Bates' legacy is not a neat label. It is the tension of a man who made complexity look beautifully dangerous. Peter Wyngarde. Peter Wyngarde was not just stylish, he was theatrical danger in a smoking jacket. With his sharp features, commanding voice, and outrageous charm, he became a cult figure, especially through Jason King. His sexuality and personal life have long been discussed in queer and bisexual terms, though careful wording is necessary because public records and private accounts can blur. What cannot be denied is the aura. Wyngarde performed masculinity as costume, seduction, comedy, and threat all at once. He was too flamboyant to be ordinary and too charismatic to dismiss. In old entertainment culture, he did not hide style. He weaponized it. Nils Astor. Nils Astor looked like a silent-era dream. Elegant, distant, romantic, and international enough for Hollywood to turn him into fantasy. Born in Sweden, he became a screen presence during the years when studios could invent identities almost from scratch. His sexuality has been discussed by biographers in queer or bisexual terms, especially within the coded world of early Hollywood. Astor's story matters because foreign glamour often gave actors both freedom and danger. They could be marketed as exotic, but not honest. The same mystery that made him attractive also made him vulnerable. Hollywood loved his ambiguity, as long as it could control it. J. Warren Kerrigan. J. Warren Kerrigan was once a silent screen idol, the kind of handsome leading man early audiences treated like royalty. Before Hollywood became a fully controlled publicity machine, stars like Kerrigan helped define what screen masculinity could look like. His life has often been discussed within early queer Hollywood history, especially because he lived with a male companion for many years. But Kerrigan's fame also shows how quickly old stars could vanish from public memory. He belonged to a period before confession, before talkies, before modern celebrity language. His story feels like a half-preserved photograph, glamorous, faded, and full of truths later generations had to recover. Jean Acker. Jean Acker entered Hollywood history through one of its most famous marriage disasters, her brief union with Rudolph Valentino. For decades, that marriage was treated like scandalous gossip, but it also belongs to the larger story of lavender marriages, image protection, and private identities hidden behind public romance. Acker has been widely discussed as lesbian or bisexual, and her life connects to Hollywood's early queer networks. What makes her fascinating is not only whom she married, but what that marriage reveals. Studios and fans wanted simple love stories. Acker's life exposed something messier. Sometimes the romance on paper was the mask, not the truth. Alla Nazimova. Alla Nazimova did not merely act in Old Hollywood. She created one of its most legendary hidden worlds. A silent-era star, producer, and artistic force, Nazimova hosted gatherings that became famous for their lesbian and bisexual circles. Her name is often linked to the phrase sewing circle, a coded term for women who loved women inside Hollywood's dangerous social maze. She was glamorous, powerful, unconventional, and far ahead of the industry around her. Nazimova matters because she was not just surviving secrecy, she was building community inside it. In a town of manufactured illusions, she created a private reality the studios could never fully control. Greta Garbo. Greta Garbo made distance feel like desire. She did not chase the camera, she seemed to retreat from it, and audiences followed anyway. Her mysterious image became one of the greatest myths in film history. Garbo's relationships with women, including her connection to Mercedes de Acosta, have been widely discussed by biographers, though she guarded her privacy with almost supernatural discipline. That privacy became part of her legend. Hollywood wanted to own her face, her romance, her silence, and her mystery. Garbo gave them only fragments. Her story is powerful because she refused full access. The most famous woman in the room remained unreachable. Marlene Dietrich. Marlene Dietrich did not ask permission to be dangerous. She wore tuxedos, kissed convention goodbye, and turned glamour into rebellion long before Hollywood knew how to sell rebellion safely. Her bisexuality has been widely documented, and her life moved through worlds where gender, desire, performance, and politics collided. Dietrich's power came from control. She understood image better than the studios did, shaping herself into something both masculine and feminine, icy and sensual, distant and unforgettable. She was not hiding in the usual way. She was performing freedom so boldly that audiences mistook it for style. Dietrich did not simply break rules, she made rule-breaking elegant. Tallulah Bankhead. Tallulah Bankhead was not a secret. She was an explosion wearing lipstick. Loud, witty, reckless, brilliant, and impossible to discipline, she lived with a boldness that terrified polite society and thrilled everyone else. Her bisexuality was widely known, and unlike many stars who whispered their way through Hollywood, Bankhead seemed almost allergic to shame. But beneath the outrageous quotes and scandalous reputation was a serious performer with real magnetism. She understood that if people were going to talk anyway, she might as well control the performance. Bankhead's life was messy, fearless, and theatrical. Old Hollywood wanted obedience. Tallulah gave them a headline with teeth. Lillian Tashman. Lillian Tashman looked like she had been designed by a fashion editor with a dangerous sense of humor. Stylish, sharp, and unforgettable, she became one of early Hollywood's most glamorous figures. Her sexuality has long been discussed in lesbian and bisexual terms, and her marriage to actor Edmund Lowe is often described within the context of lavender marriage culture. Tashman's life shows how style could function as armor. She was too visible to disappear, yet too private to be fully captured. Hollywood loved her sophistication, but her deeper legacy belongs to the hidden networks of women who turned friendship, fashion, and secrecy into survival. Patsy Kelly. Patsy Kelly built comedy out of speed, nerve, and a voice that could cut through any room. She was funny in a way that felt blunt, modern, and completely unbothered by glamour rules. Kelly was more openly connected to lesbian identity than many women of her era, and her honesty gave her a different place in Hollywood history. She was not the fragile leading lady or the silent sufferer. She was the scene stealer who made audiences laugh before they could judge her. That is her power. In an industry built to polish women into fantasy, Patsy Kelly made being real feel hilarious and radical. Ava Le Gallienne. Ava Le Gallienne belonged to the theater before she belonged to Hollywood, and that distinction matters. On stage, she was a serious artist, a translator of emotion, discipline, and literary power. Her lesbian identity has long been part of her documented legacy, especially within theatrical history. Unlike studio stars trapped entirely by publicity departments, Le Gallienne built a career around artistic authority. But even the theater world had limits, and women who loved women still had to navigate social danger. Her story is not built on scandal. It is built on devotion, to performance, to independence, and to a life that refused to be made small. Mercedes de Acosta. Mercedes de Acosta was not simply a writer moving through Hollywood. She became one of the most talked about figures in the private queer world behind classic glamour. Her name is linked to major stars, including Greta Garbo and Marlene Dietrich, and her relationships have become part of old Hollywood legend. But de Acosta's story is complicated because she was both participant and witness, someone who loved famous women, wrote about them, and helped preserve fragments of a world built on secrecy. She reminds us that hidden history often survives through letters, rumors, memoirs, and pain. Hollywood kept secrets, but paper remembered. Kay Francis. Kay Francis was once one of Warner Brothers' most elegant queens of the 1930s. Tall, stylish, wounded-looking, and wrapped in gowns that seemed to understand sorrow. Audiences knew her as a woman of romance and sacrifice, but biographers have also discussed her bisexuality and private relationships beyond the studio-approved image. Francis's career later faded, partly because Hollywood could be merciless to women once their box office power slipped. Yet her screen presence remains hypnotic. She looked glamorous, but never empty. In every close-up, there was a hint of someone who knew more than she could say. Kay Francis made secrecy look expensive. Josephine Baker. Josephine Baker did not enter fame quietly. She arrived like a revolution in motion. In Paris, she became a sensation, turning dance, comedy, beauty, and danger into one dazzling public image. But Baker was never just an entertainer. She was also a resistance worker, a civil rights voice, and a woman whose private life has often been discussed in bisexual terms by biographers. That matters because Baker's glamour was never simple decoration. It was power. She knew how to make the world stare, then used that attention for something larger than applause. Old Hollywood often trapped women inside fantasy, but Baker turned fantasy into freedom, politics, and legend. She was not merely watched, she conquered the gaze. Billie Holiday. Billie Holiday sang as if every note had been wounded before it reached the microphone. Her voice carried heartbreak, elegance, survival, and quiet rebellion, making her one of the most emotionally powerful performers of the 20th century. Holiday's private life has often been discussed by biographers as complex and bisexual, but her deeper story is about the burden placed on women who lived outside polite rules. She was judged for love, addiction, race, pain, and honesty, often by people who consumed her sorrow as entertainment. Hollywood and the music world loved the sadness in her voice, but punished the woman behind it. Billie Holiday did not sing pain to shock people. She sang it because she knew it. Bessie Smith. Bessie Smith did not ask permission to dominate a room. Known as the Empress of the Blues, she sang with a force that sounded like survival turned into thunder. Her bisexuality has been widely discussed in blues history, and her life stood far outside the delicate image later Hollywood preferred for women performers. Smith's world was rougher, freer, more dangerous, and more honest. She sang about desire, betrayal, drinking, loneliness, and power without making herself small. That is why she still feels modern. She belonged to an era that tried to police women's bodies and voices, but Bessie Smith made both impossible to ignore. She did not whisper her truth, she belted it. Ma Rainey. Ma Rainey sounded like the blues had put on a crown. Before Hollywood learned to package rebellion, Rainey was already living it, on stage, in music, and in public attitude. Her relationships with women and her queer legacy have been widely discussed by historians, especially because her songs carried bold references to desire and independence. She was not polished into studio glamour, she was raw authority. Rainey came from a performance world where survival meant nerve, presence, and control. The danger around her was real, but so was the freedom she carved out. She matters because she turned marginalized life into art without apologizing. Ma Rainey did not fit the system. she made the system listen anyway. Ethel Waters. Ethel Waters had a voice that could move from warmth to grief, like a candle flickering in a storm. She broke barriers as a Black performer in theater, film, radio, and television, entering spaces that were never designed to welcome her fully. Her private life has been discussed by some biographers in queer or bisexual terms, but her public achievement alone is staggering. Waters carried the weight of race, gender, class, and respectability politics all at once. The industry wanted performers like her to be talented, grateful, and controlled. She gave them talent, but never simple control. Her story is not just about hidden identity. It is about survival in a world that demanded silence from every direction. Gertrude Lawrence. Gertrude Lawrence had the kind of theatrical magnetism that made audiences feel they were being led into a private joke. Elegant, witty, emotionally sharp, and fiercely sophisticated, she became one of the great stage stars of her era. Her private life has often been discussed in bisexual terms, especially through theatrical biographies and accounts of her close relationships. But Lawrence's real power was her control of persona. She understood that glamour was not just beauty, it was timing, distance, and suggestion. She belonged to a world where desire could be hidden in a look, a song, or a gesture. Gertrude Lawrence made performance feel like confession without ever surrendering the whole truth. Louise Brooks. Louise Brooks looked like the future had accidentally appeared in the silent era. With that sharp bob, cool gaze, and rebellious stillness, she became one of cinema's most unforgettable images. Brooks later wrote and spoke with rare honesty about sexuality, power, and the hypocrisy of Hollywood, and her bisexuality has been widely discussed in film history. What made her dangerous was not just beauty, it was intelligence. She saw through the industry while still inside it, and that made her difficult to control. Hollywood preferred stars who obeyed mythology. Brooks questioned it, mocked it, and then outlived it as a legend. She was not just a silent film icon, she was a warning in black satin. Janet Gaynor. Janet Gaynor was sold as innocence itself, soft-eyed, gentle, emotionally pure, and beloved by early Hollywood audiences. As the first winner of the Academy Award for Best Actress, she became part of film history before the industry fully understood its own power. Later accounts have discussed her close relationship with Mary Martin, but this is where the script must stay careful. Much of her private life remains debated rather than publicly confirmed. That uncertainty is part of the old Hollywood story. Stars were not allowed to define themselves openly. They were defined by studios, magazines, and carefully staged romance. Gaynor's image was sweetness, but her legacy carries mystery. Sometimes, silence becomes the loudest surviving evidence. Mary Martin. Mary Martin seemed to float through American entertainment with charm, discipline, and impossible lightness. To many, she was Broadway magic, the woman who could make Peter Pan feel not childish, but eternal. Her close bond with Janet Gaynor has long been discussed by writers and Hollywood observers, though careful wording is important, because both women lived in an era when private lives were heavily protected. Martin's story belongs to that space between public innocence and private speculation. She became a symbol of joy while living inside an industry full of rules about what women could admit. Her legacy is not gossip. It is the reminder that even the brightest stage lights can leave shadows behind. Elizabeth Scott. Elizabeth Scott had a voice like cigarette smoke and a face made for betrayal. In film noir, she looked born to stand under streetlights with a secret no detective could fully solve. But in the 1950s, Scott became part of one of Hollywood's most notorious outing scandals when a Scandal magazine linked her to lesbian rumors. She sued, and the episode showed how dangerous accusation itself could be. Whether framed as fact or rumor, the damage was real. Scott's career never fully escaped the atmosphere of suspicion. That is why her story matters. Old Hollywood did not need proof to punish someone. Sometimes a whisper was enough to dim a star. Claudette Colbert. Claudette Colbert made elegance look casual, as if wit, beauty, and control were simply her natural weather. She became one of the great sophisticated stars of classic Hollywood, moving through comedy and drama with polished intelligence. Her private life has been the subject of speculation because of long companionship stories, but it should be presented carefully as debated, not confirmed. Colbert's public image was too refined for scandal, and that refinement may have helped protect her. She understood the old rule: mystery could be safer than explanation. In a town where women were pushed into simple romantic narratives, Colbert stayed controlled, guarded, and elusive. Hollywood sold her charm, but never fully owned her. Agnes Moorehead. Agnes Moorehead could steal a scene with one lifted eyebrow. Long before many viewers knew her as Endora on Bewitched, she had already built a powerful career in radio, theater, and film, including unforgettable work with Orson Welles. Her private life has often been debated by biographers and fans, with some discussing her as part of Hollywood's hidden queer world, though confirmation remains complicated. Moorehead's power was never based on romantic fantasy. It came from intelligence, command, and a voice that could freeze a room. That made her different from the studio's usual female ideal. She did not need to be desired to be magnetic. She made authority itself feel theatrical. Judith Anderson. Judith Anderson did not enter a film, she haunted it. As Mrs. Danvers in Rebecca, she created one of cinema's most chilling portraits of obsessive devotion, and that performance has been analyzed for decades through queer subtext. Anderson's own private life has been discussed carefully by historians, but what is undeniable is her importance to coded Hollywood storytelling. She represented the kind of woman the studio system feared: intense, controlled, emotionally dangerous, and not built around male approval. Her screen presence turned repression into electricity. Whether on stage or in film, Anderson made silence feel threatening. She showed that hidden desire did not have to be spoken to dominate an entire story. Nancy Culp. Nancy Culp became famous to television audiences as Miss Jane Hathaway on the Beverly Hillbillies. But behind the comic precision was a woman with a sharper, more complicated life than the role suggested. Later, Culp publicly acknowledged her lesbian identity, making her one of the clearer names in this section of hidden entertainment history. Her career also shows how queer performers were often pushed into eccentric, comic, or supporting roles rather than romantic leads. But Culp made those roles memorable. She turned awkwardness into timing and stiffness into character. The industry may not have offered her the glamorous fantasy, but she built recognition anyway. Sometimes, survival meant stealing the show from the margins. Portia Nelson. Portia Nelson lived in the world of cabaret, theater, film, and music, where performance could become both mask and confession. She appeared in classic entertainment spaces, including The Sound of Music, but her legacy reaches beyond screen time. Nelson was a lesbian artist whose life and work connected to the quieter networks of women surviving outside traditional Hollywood expectations. She was not packaged as a studio goddess, and perhaps that allowed a different kind of truth to remain visible. Her story matters because fame is not the only measure of impact. Some performers preserved emotional honesty in smaller rooms, sharper songs, and private communities. Portia Nelson reminds us that hidden history often sings softly. Peggy Fears. Peggy Fears had the kind of life that sounds almost too dramatic for fiction. Broadway beauty, Ziegfeld glamour, Hollywood connections, wealth, reinvention, and a private world that crossed the boundaries polite society tried to enforce. Her relationships with women have been widely discussed, and she is often remembered as part of the lesbian and bisexual networks around entertainment and high society. Fears belong to a world where glamour could protect you, but only up to a point. Money, beauty, and fame did not erase social danger. Her story gives this list a different texture. She was not only an actress or showgirl, she was part of the hidden social architecture behind old celebrity culture. Libby Holman. Libby Holman lived like a torch song with consequences. A singer, actress, and society figure, she became famous not only for performance, but for scandal, tragedy, wealth, and mystery. Her bisexuality has been discussed by biographers, and her personal life connected her to a world of intense relationships and public judgment. Holman's story belongs to the darker side of glamour, the place where fame, money, grief, and rumor twist together until the truth becomes difficult to separate from legend. She was magnetic because she seemed dangerous, but also wounded. Old Hollywood loved women like that on screen. In real life, it often punished them for being too complicated to control. Barbara Stanwyck. Barbara Stanwyck was steel wrapped in satin. On screen, she could be vulnerable, ruthless, seductive, funny, and terrifyingly intelligent, sometimes all inside one scene. Her private life has long been debated, with many writers discussing her within Hollywood's hidden lesbian or bisexual mythology. But the responsible script must treat this as speculation, not confirmed fact. What can be said safely is that Stanwyck resisted easy categories. She built a career on control at a time when actresses were often expected to be decorative. She played women who understood power because she understood power herself. Whether the rumors were true or not, Stanwyck's screen image gave queer audiences something unmistakable: strength without apology. Joan Crawford. Joan Crawford did not become a legend by being soft. She built herself piece by piece: face, body, voice, discipline, hunger, until Hollywood could no longer ignore her. Crawford's private life has been surrounded by rumors and debated accounts involving women, but the script should frame those stories carefully, not as settled fact. What makes Crawford essential is the way she turned image into warfare. She survived studio politics, career collapses, public cruelty, and reinvention after reinvention. For viewers reading her through queer Hollywood history, Crawford represents the star as constructed identity, a mask so powerful it becomes real. She may have hidden many things, but ambition was never one of them. Katharine Hepburn. Katharine Hepburn was not built for obedience. The trousers, the clipped voice, the athletic confidence, the refusal to perform soft femininity on command. Everything about her challenged the studio's preferred image of womanhood. Her private life remains one of Hollywood's most debated subjects, with biographers and commentators often discussing queer readings of her image and relationships. But certainty is not the only reason she matters here. Hepburn gave audiences a female star who did not seem designed for male approval. She moved like she owned herself, and that alone made her revolutionary. Whether viewed through fact, mystery, or myth, Hepburn's legacy is defiance. She made independence look like a star quality. Spring Byington. Spring Byington seemed gentle, warm, and familiar. The kind of character actress who could make a film feel more human just by entering the room. But her private life has long been discussed because of her close relationship with Marjorie Main, though responsible wording should keep it in the debated category. What makes Byington interesting is that she represents the quieter side of Hollywood secrecy. Not every hidden story involved scandal sheets or destroyed careers. Some existed in domestic arrangements, loyal companionships, and lives carefully lived away from aggressive publicity. Byington's screen image was comfort, but her legacy carries questions about what women could build together when public language failed them. Marjorie Main. Marjorie Main was never the polished glamour queen, and that was her gift. With her rough voice, earthy humor, and unforgettable presence, she became famous as the kind of woman who could bulldoze through a scene and leave everyone else looking delicate. Her close bond with Spring Byington has long been discussed in Hollywood history, though it remains best treated as debated rather than confirmed. Main's screen persona matters because she expanded what women could be on screen. She was loud, physical, stubborn, and powerful, qualities often denied to actresses chasing beauty. Whether or not every private rumor is true, Main's career gave audiences a woman who refused to shrink. Ona Munson. Ona Munson is often remembered for playing Belle Watling in Gone with the Wind, but that single role hides a much more complex performer. Munson had stage experience, screen glamour, and a private life that has been discussed by biographers in bisexual terms. Like many actresses of her era, she worked inside an industry that offered visibility, but demanded emotional disguise. Her screen image could be warm, worldly, and slightly tragic, which makes her real-life story feel even more haunting. Munson's later struggles and death add a darker shadow to her legacy. She represents the performer Hollywood used beautifully, but never fully protected. Behind the costume was a woman carrying far more than the role allowed. Dorothy Arzner. Dorothy Arzner was not simply part of Hollywood history. She broke into the machinery and directed it. As one of the few major female directors working inside the studio system, Arzner built a career in a space almost entirely controlled by men. She was also a lesbian Hollywood figure whose life and image have become central to queer film history. Arzner's importance is enormous because she did not just appear inside the frame, she controlled the frame. Her films often gave women unusual emotional force, independence, and complexity. In a town that asked women to be looked at, Arzner looked back. That made her dangerous, necessary, and far ahead of her time. Natasha Rambova. Natasha Rambova moved through silent Hollywood like a designer of dreams and disasters. Best remembered by many as Rudolph Valentino's wife, she was far more than a romantic footnote. She was a costume designer, artistic force, dancer, and woman of intense personal mystery. Her private life has been discussed in bisexual or queer terms, though much remains debated. Rambova matters because she lived at the intersection of image-making and identity. She helped shape Valentino's myth while becoming trapped inside it herself. Hollywood often reduced women near famous men to decoration, but Rambova was not decoration. She understood style as power. Her life remains one of early cinema's most fascinating riddles. Rudolph Valentino. Rudolph Valentino became the original cinematic heartthrob, the Latin lover, the dream man, the fantasy that made audiences faint and moral guardians panic. But his masculinity was controversial even in his own time. Critics attacked him as too exotic, too elegant, too soft, too dangerous. And later generations built endless speculation around his sexuality. The responsible script should treat Valentino as debated, not confirmed. Still, his importance to queer Hollywood history is undeniable because his image destabilized traditional masculinity. He made desire look theatrical, emotional, and beautifully strange. Whether the rumors were true or not, Valentino frightened people because he proved masculinity could be performed differently, and millions still adored it. Edmund Lowe. Edmund Lowe had the clean-cut charm of an early Hollywood leading man, but his name often appears in discussions of Lavender Marriage because of his relationship with Lillian Tashman. Their marriage was glamorous, stylish, and publicly acceptable, exactly the kind of arrangement studios and society could understand. But behind that surface, historians have often discussed both partners in connection with Hollywood's hidden queer networks. With Lowe, careful wording is important. The point is not to turn him into gossip, but to show how image management worked. Marriage could become a shield, a contract, or a performance. In old Hollywood, sometimes the most convincing romance was the one designed to stop questions. Jack Pickford. Jack Pickford was born close to Hollywood royalty as the brother of Mary Pickford. But his own life became a storm of fame, privilege, addiction, scandal, and early death. His sexuality has been discussed in terms of fluidity and bisexual rumor, though much of it remains debated. Pickford belonged to the wild, silent era world before studios fully mastered damage control. That world could be freer, but also more destructive. He had access to celebrity before celebrity had rules, and it consumed him quickly. His story feels less like a polished studio secret and more like a warning. Hollywood's first golden children were not protected from the machine. They helped build it, then bled inside it. Tyrone Power. Tyrone Power was the kind of star Hollywood loved to frame as perfect, handsome, romantic, heroic, and effortless in adventure roles. He looked like the answer to every studio publicity department's prayer. But behind that idealized masculinity, Power's private life has long been surrounded by bisexual rumors and debated biographical claims. The script should not present those claims as settled fact. Instead, his story belongs to the larger question of how studios manufactured male desire. Power's image had to remain clean because audiences were buying fantasy, not complexity. That pressure itself is the story. Whether every whisper was true or not, the industry needed him to look uncomplicated. Real people rarely are. Cary Grant. Cary Grant may be the most elegant question mark in Hollywood history. He was charming, stylish, funny, romantic, and so perfectly controlled that even his pauses seemed expensive. His long friendship and shared home life with Randolph Scott became one of old Hollywood's most famous debated stories, often surrounded by speculation, but never cleanly resolved. That is why Grant must be handled carefully. Do not claim certainty. Frame him as a mystery shaped by an era of silence. What makes him fascinating is that his whole image was performance, not fake, but crafted. Cary Grant was not born Cary Grant. He invented him. And perhaps that is why the mystery never dies. Randolph Scott. Randolph Scott looked like the kind of man Hollywood trusted with a horse, a gun, and a sunset. Tall, rugged, quiet, and controlled, he became one of the great Western faces of classic cinema. But behind that straight-backed cowboy image, his long friendship and shared home life with Cary Grant became one of old Hollywood's most famous debated mysteries. Responsible storytelling should not present Scott as confirmed gay. Instead, his entry belongs to the shadowy world of speculation, coded publicity, and studio-era silence. What makes Scott fascinating is the contrast. On screen, he represented traditional masculinity. Off-screen, his private life became part of a question Hollywood never wanted answered. The cowboy rode into legend carrying a secret-shaped shadow. Laurence Olivier. Laurence Olivier was not just an actor. He was treated like acting royalty. Shakespeare, prestige, command, voice, posture, everything about him seemed built for greatness. But later biographies and Hollywood discussions have included debated claims about his private relationships, including stories connected to Danny Kaye. This is where the script must stay careful. Olivier should not be framed as confirmed gay or bisexual, but as part of a long-running biographical debate. That debate matters because it shows how even the most respected actors lived under intense pressure to protect reputation. Olivier's public image was grand, disciplined, almost untouchable. Yet the private rumors around him remind us that even legends were not free from the hidden rules of their time. Danny Kaye. Danny Kaye made comedy look like magic performed at dangerous speed. He could sing, dance, twist language into fireworks, and turn silliness into genius before the audience knew what happened. But behind that bright public charm, later accounts have linked him to one of Hollywood's most discussed, rumored relationships with Laurence Olivier. Again, this should be treated as debated, not confirmed. Kaye's story works because it reveals how easily entertainment can hide complexity. The funnier the performer, the less the audience expects sadness, secrecy, or forbidden longing underneath. Hollywood loved Kaye as harmless delight, but the stories around his private life suggest something more complicated. Sometimes laughter was not just performance, it was camouflage. Van Johnson. Van Johnson was MGM's boy-next-door dream. Red hair, friendly smile, musical charm, and the kind of safe masculinity wartime audiences trusted. But his private life has long been discussed in connection with studio-controlled image-making and lavender marriage rumors. The most important part of his story is not to declare every rumor as fact, but to show how studios protected marketable stars. Johnson's appeal depended on being wholesome, romantic, and uncomplicated. If the public image cracked, the business machine panicked. That is what makes him such a perfect example of old Hollywood pressure. He was sold as cheerful American innocence, but behind that image sat the machinery of control. Sometimes the brightest smiles were built by publicity departments. Robert Taylor. Robert Taylor was called the man with the perfect profile. and Hollywood knew exactly how to use that face. MGM shaped him into a romantic ideal, handsome, polished, disciplined, and safe enough to sell to millions. But Taylor's private life has been surrounded by long-standing bisexual rumors and debated industry stories. This entry needs careful wording because rumor is not proof. Still, his place in the list makes sense as part of Hollywood's broader culture of image protection. Taylor was not allowed to be messy. He had to be the fantasy, masculine, desirable, controlled, and publicly acceptable. That pressure tells us more than the gossip itself. Hollywood did not just create stars. It created versions of people that real life could never fully match. Cesar Romero. Cesar Romero had one of the most fascinating careers in classic entertainment. Suave Latin lover, elegant villain, musical charmer, and later the unforgettable Joker on Batman. He was stylish, witty, handsome, and always slightly theatrical in the best possible way. Romero has long been widely discussed as gay or closeted, though he kept his private life carefully guarded during his career. That privacy was not unusual, it was survival. Hollywood could enjoy his flamboyance, his charm, and his social magnetism, but it still expected silence around anything that threatened the romantic image. Romero's legacy works because he never seemed dull, even when the industry tried to make everyone safe. He turned elegance into armor and mystery into lasting star power. Clifton Webb. Clifton Webb did not need to look like a traditional leading man to dominate a scene. Thin, sharp, elegant, acid-tongued, and perfectly composed, he became unforgettable in films like Laura and Sitting Pretty. Webb has long been discussed as gay or queer-coded within classic Hollywood history, and his bachelor image became part of his public persona. But the key is tone. Present him as widely discussed, not cheaply mocked. Webb's power came from refusing ordinary masculinity. He made sophistication feel dangerous and intelligence feel glamorous. In a town full of square-jawed heroes, Webb offered something far more memorable: precision, wit, and icy control. Hollywood may have preferred obvious masculinity, but Clifton Webb made refinement unforgettable. Franklin Pangborn. Franklin Pangborn could walk into a scene and immediately change its temperature. Nervous, fussy, elegant, flustered, and brilliantly timed, he became one of classic comedy's most recognizable character actors. His performances are often discussed through the lens of queer coding because Hollywood used men like Pangborn to suggest difference without naming it. Whether playing clerks, managers, officials, or exasperated side characters, he brought a camp energy that audiences understood even when the script stayed silent. Pangborn's importance is bigger than screen time. He represents the coded language of old cinema, where identity often survived in gestures, voices, timing, and attitude. Hollywood would not say the word, but performers like Pangborn made sure the signal still reached the audience. Edward Everett Horton. Edward Everett Horton made hesitation into an art form. With his startled expressions, fluttery voice, and perfect comic rhythm, he became one of the great supporting players of the 1930s and 40s. Horton has long been discussed in queer Hollywood history, especially because his screen persona often carried coded softness, nervousness, and refined eccentricity. But reducing him to coding would miss the craft. He was a master technician of comedy, capable of making one reaction shot funnier than another actor's entire speech. In the hidden language of classic film, Horton's characters often stood outside the masculine norm. That difference became his signature. Hollywood gave him side roles, but he used them to steal entire scenes. Eric Blore. Eric Blore was the kind of comic actor who could make a butler more memorable than the people he served. Elegant, dry, exasperated, and impossibly precise, he became a familiar face in the sophisticated comedies and musicals of the classic era. Blore is sometimes discussed within queer-coded Hollywood performance, though his private life should be handled with caution. What matters most is how his screen image contributed to a recognizable tradition. Men whose refinement, voice, and manner carried coded difference in an era that avoided direct representation. Blore's comedy was never sloppy. It was polished mischief. He turned service roles into miniature acts of rebellion. The stars danced, romanced, and sang, but Bloor often delivered the sting. Grady Sutton. Grady Sutton looked like innocence had wandered into the wrong party. Tall, gentle, awkward, and soft-spoken, he became a dependable comic presence in films alongside stars like W.C. Fields and Mae West. Sutton has been widely discussed as gay in classic Hollywood circles, though he lived in an era where openness could destroy opportunity. His screen persona often played against traditional masculinity, making him memorable without needing to dominate the frame. That is the quiet power of character actors like Sutton. They carried difference into mainstream films under the cover of comedy. Audiences laughed, studios looked away, and something real slipped through. Grady Sutton's legacy is subtle, but it belongs to the hidden grammar of old Hollywood. Charles Butterworth. Charles Butterworth had a voice so dry, it sounded like boredom had become a comedy style. His deadpan delivery, sleepy expression, and strange timing made him one of the most distinctive comic figures of the 1930s. Butterworth has been discussed in connection with Hollywood's underground queer circles, though details should be framed carefully rather than aggressively. What makes him useful for this list is the atmosphere around him: witty parties, coded friendships, social circles, and an entertainment world where identity often lived between the lines. He did not fit the heroic mold, and that made him interesting. Hollywood sold certainty, but Butterworth's comedy felt beautifully uncertain. He turned awkward detachment into an entire personality. Richard Deacon. Richard Deacon became famous for playing authority figures who seemed one breath away from total irritation. Best remembered as Mel Cooley on The Dick Van Dyke Show, he perfected the art of stiff, precise, quietly ridiculous control. Deacon has long been widely discussed as gay, though like many performers of his generation, he kept his private life far from the publicity machine. He turned restraint into character. He made irritation funny, and in doing so, he became unforgettable without ever needing the industry's permission to be glamorous. Jack Cassidy. Jack Cassidy looked like confidence wearing a tuxedo. Charming, musical, handsome, and dangerously theatrical, he could play sophistication with a sharp edge. His son David Cassidy later discussed Jack's bisexuality, which makes this entry stronger than simple rumor. But Cassidy's story is not only about sexuality, it is about the public hunger for polished male performers who could seem romantic, witty, and controlled while living far more complicated private lives. He moved through Broadway, television, and film with charisma that sometimes felt too bright to be stable. There was brilliance in him, but also volatility. Cassidy reminds us that Hollywood charm often came with shadows. The smile could be dazzling and still hide a storm. John Dahl. John Dahl looked like a secret even before he spoke. In Hitchcock's Rope, he became part of one of classic cinema's most famously queer-coded thrillers, playing a character surrounded by arrogance, repression, danger, and forbidden intimacy. Dahl has long been widely discussed as gay or closeted, though he lived in a time when public confirmation was nearly impossible. His career never became as large as his talent suggested, which makes his screen appearances feel even more charged. He belonged to the kind of Hollywood that could use queer subtext for tension, but would not protect queer performers in real life. Dahl's legacy is sharp and unsettling. He did not need many roles to leave a mark. Laird Cregar. Laird Cregar was a giant presence in every sense, physically imposing, emotionally intense, and capable of making villains feel tragic before the script asked for sympathy. In films like The Lodger and Hangover Square, he brought sophistication and sorrow to darkness. Cregar has often been discussed through queer Hollywood biography and coded readings, especially because his image did not fit the narrow leading man standards of his time. His crash dieting and early death at just 31 made his story even more painful. Hollywood wanted him thinner, safer, more marketable. What it already had was extraordinary. Cregar's tragedy is a brutal reminder that the industry often destroys what makes an actor unique, then mourns the loss too late. George Sanders. George Sanders sounded like contempt had taken voice lessons. Smooth, icy, elegant, and faintly bored by everyone around him, he became one of cinema's great sophisticated villains. His private life has been surrounded by debated claims and rumors involving men, but those should be treated carefully rather than presented as fact. Sanders belongs here because his screen persona helped define a type of coded male elegance. Too polished, too witty, too detached, and too dangerous to be ordinary. Whether every private story is true or not, the aura is undeniable. He made cruelty charming and intelligence threatening. Hollywood loved villains who seemed abnormal, as long as audiences did not ask what normal really meant. Gilbert Roland. Gilbert Rollins brought a different kind of masculinity to classic Hollywood. Romantic, physical, stylish, and touched with old-world danger. As a Mexican-born actor in an industry full of stereotypes, he had to navigate race, desire, typecasting, and image all at once. His private life has been discussed in terms of bisexual rumor and fluidity, but this should remain carefully framed as debated. What makes Roland compelling is how Hollywood used his beauty. He was marketed as exotic and passionate, which allowed him to seem slightly outside ordinary American masculinity. That difference became both opportunity and trap. Roland's legacy shows how the studio system turned identity into packaging. It sold mystery, but punished truth whenever mystery became too real. Alec Guinness. Alec Guinness ended this list, not because his story is simple, but because it is one of the most delicate. To many viewers, he became the image of dignity, Shakespearean skill, British restraint, Oscar-winning prestige, and later, the wise face of Obi-Wan Kenobi. But biographies and reports have discussed a hidden private life, including a claimed 1946 legal incident under Britain's harsh laws against homosexual acts. This must be framed carefully. Later accounts claim it, while Guinness himself remained intensely private. His entry reveals the central truth of this entire video. In the old system, reputation could be a fortress, but also a prison. Guinness mastered control on screen, yet his mystery reminds us how many stars lived behind locked doors. So the next time someone tells you, old Hollywood was innocent, remember this. The studios did not just create stars, they created masks. Behind the glamour were people loving quietly, risking everything, and surviving inside a system built on silence. Some stories are confirmed, some remain mysteries, but all prove one thing. Hollywood's brightest lights cast the darkest shadows.
Before you go, if you enjoyed this documentary and appreciate carefully researched stories that separate historical fact from popular myth, you're exactly where you belong. Welcome to the Pizzaverse. Around here, we don't glorify organized crime. We don't rewrite history. And we don't chase conspiracy theories just because they make flashy thumbnails. We dig through the evidence. We compare the sources. We challenge the legends. Then we tell the story as honestly as the historical record allows. Whether we're exploring the hidden psychology of famous criminals, the forgotten truths behind fairy tales, the secrets of old Hollywood, or the real history of organized crime, our goal is always the same: to uncover what actually happened. If that's the kind of content you enjoy, help us keep growing. Hit like if you enjoyed the documentary. Subscribe if you haven't already. Ring the notification bell so you never miss a new investigation. And leave a comment below. Tell me, what old Hollywood story should we investigate next? As always, thank you for supporting independent documentary storytelling. The Pizzaverse keeps growing because of viewers like you. Until next time, keep asking questions, keep challenging the myths, and never stop looking beneath the surface. I'm Ghost. This has been another Pizzaverse Studios documentary. I'll see you in the next one. And remember, history always leaves clues. You just have to know where to look.